When the ocean turns silent, death is often closest. From fashion shoots gone wrong to military drills, oil rigs, and cage dives, these true stories reveal how quickly calm blue waters can erupt into chaos. Great whites, tiger sharks, and unseen predators strike without warning, drawn by motion and fear. No training or courage can stop what moves beneath the surface. In this video, we dive into terrifying real stories of shark attacks and oceanic survival. March 12, 2025. The ocean off Gansbaai, South Africa, shimmered under bright sunlight as cameras and crew prepared for a luxury fashion shoot. The day felt calm and perfect. 28-year-old Isabella Hart stood on the floating platform just beyond the anchored boat, adjusting her position as the director finalized camera angles. She was one of the most sought-after models in the industry, known for her confidence and grace in challenging shoots. Raised in Sydney, she had always been drawn to the water, a swimmer since childhood, comfortable in waves that intimidated others. Her career had taken her across the world, but this particular job, a high-end campaign themed Beauty Meets Nature, felt special. It was her final shoot before taking a break from modeling to focus on family. The crew had traveled to Gansbaai specifically because of its striking scenery, turquoise water, rugged cliffs, and the illusion of calm near the surface. From above, the ocean looked harmless, its glassy texture reflecting the bright morning sky. Beneath, however, these waters were home to one of nature's most powerful predators, the great white shark. Isabella moved confidently on the platform, surrounded by props meant to look like coral fragments and seashells. The team adjusted lighting reflectors, unaware that the faint shadow moving below the platform was not just the play of light. Gansbaai, often referred to as the shark capital of the world, was known for its unpredictable encounters. Local guides had warned about baited boats earlier that morning, but the team, focused on timing and visuals, had dismissed the concern as routine. As the camera began rolling, Isabella leaned slightly over the edge, one hand brushing the surface of the water for a dynamic shot. The reflection beneath her rippled softly, blending shadow and color. Then, without warning, the calm broke apart. From the deep blue, a massive, great white shark surged upward with terrifying speed. Its body cut through the water like a torpedo, jaws open wide. It struck the floating platform with explosive force, the impact echoing like thunder across the bay. The sudden jolt sent equipment tumbling and the structure tipping violently to one side. Isabella lost her footing instantly, her balance gone before anyone could react. She fell into the churning water, her bright costume vanishing beneath the surface. Crew members froze in disbelief, their cheers turning into gasps as the shark lunged again, this time directly toward her. The animal's jaws clamped down on her leg with immense pressure, dragging her into the depths in a swirl of foam and blood. The ocean that had looked so calm seconds earlier turned into a scene of horror. Panic erupted as the team screamed for help, tossing flotation rings and firing emergency flares into the air. But below the surface, the predator's power ruled. The attack unfolded in moments, shocking even those used to the sea's unpredictability. The water around the platform erupted again as the massive predator twisted and dove, pulling Isabella deeper with every surge. The once clear sea turned dark with motion and color, a mixture of foam, bubbles, and spreading red. Crew members leaned over the edge, shouting and waving for help, their fear growing as the seconds stretched. The platform tilted dangerously, equipment sliding off into the waves, lights shorting out as they hit the water. Every second felt longer than the last, but the ocean gave no sign of release. Beneath the surface, the shark's raw strength tore through silence. The movement was fast and forceful, the creature shaking its prey before vanishing below in a burst of motion. Above, the water rippled violently, then stilled almost too suddenly. Bits of fabric and floating props drifted across the surface, moving in slow, circular motions. The flares burned brightly in the air, reflecting on the water that now carried only fragments of color. The boat's captain sounded an alarm as the rest of the crew pulled ropes and nets, hoping for any sign of her. One of the photographers fell to his knees, his camera still strapped to his neck, lens cracked and covered in seawater. The sound of the waves returned, soft and rhythmic, as if nothing had happened. Only the red streaks near the floating stage told the truth of what had occurred. Within minutes, rescue boats from a nearby harbor raced toward the coordinates. Divers prepared to enter the water, though everyone knew the chance of survival was nearly gone. The sea, calm once more, revealed nothing but scattered debris. a piece of cloth caught on a buoy, fluttering weakly in the wind. The stillness that followed felt heavy, unnatural, almost mocking in its quiet. By the time officials arrived, the area had already been cleared. The crew sat huddled together, faces pale, clothes drenched. No one spoke. The platform, now half sunken, was pulled toward shore by the tide, broken and scarred from the impact. Cameras and lighting gear floated nearby, each piece a reminder of how quickly control had slipped away. Marine experts arrived soon after, confirming what locals already feared. The site was renowned for its frequent sightings of large sharks, particularly during the early hours when visibility was poor. They explained that curiosity, not hunger, might have drawn the predator close, but that such immense power left no room for escape once the strike began. News of the incident spread rapidly, shocking both the fashion industry and wildlife communities. Headlines filled with questions of safety, oversight, and risk. Investigations revealed that local guides had warned the crew that morning about recent shark activity, but the production had chosen to continue, believing the shallow zone was safe. Days later, a memorial formed along the shoreline. Flowers, candles, and photographs were placed near the dock where the team had launched. Fellow models, photographers, and supporters arrived quietly to pay their respects. The sea remained calm, its turquoise hue hiding the depth that had claimed her. The tragedy left a lasting mark. The campaign was canceled, and new safety rules were introduced for water-based shoots worldwide. For those who witnessed it, the memory would never fade. The beauty of the ocean had turned merciless in seconds, reminding everyone that beneath even the most peaceful surface, the wild still ruled without warning or mercy. March 18, 2024. The waters off the coast of Queensland glistened beneath a pale morning sun as the U.S. Navy began another round of open-water drills. Among the participants was Petty Officer Marcus Liu, a 27-year-old diver known for his discipline and calm focus. Born in San Diego, Marcus grew up fascinated by the ocean. His father had been a naval engineer, and by the time Marcus was 12, he was already learning to swim in deep water and handle gear with precision. Years of training turned that childhood fascination into a career defined by endurance, skill, and respect for the sea's unpredictability. That morning, the water appeared harmless, a deep blue stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The training zone was positioned near a wide reef system, a region renowned for its coral growth and schools of bait fish that occasionally attracted larger predators. The objective of the day's exercise was to simulate underwater approach and evasion, a test of teamwork, coordination, and awareness. Marcus and his team moved in formation, their fins cutting smooth trails through the current as they followed the lead diver's signal. For the first half hour, everything ran smoothly. Each swimmer maintained distance, adjusting rhythm to the movement of the tide. Beneath them, coral shapes flickered like moving shadows, and silver flashes of small fish darted between the formations. The water was calm, visibility clear, and confidence high. The drills often involved low-visibility situations, but today seemed routine, until it wasn't. Without warning, the atmosphere shifted. From the deeper blue ahead, a dark, heavy silhouette rose fast, slicing upward with alarming speed. The moment lasted only seconds, enough for Marcus to sense the motion before it was too late. A massive tiger shark, drawn by commotion and scent, surged from the depths beneath the squad. Its striped body glimmered faintly as it accelerated, propelled by a single powerful flick of its tail. The strike came with terrifying force. Marcus felt a hard impact against his side as the predator's snout struck first, followed by a sharp tear through his wetsuit. The shark's teeth grazed deep into his thigh, ripping fabric and skin in a violent burst. Water around him clouded instantly, red mixing with blue. Panic surged, but his training pushed instinct forward. He kicked and twisted violently, striking the creature with all the strength left in his legs. The shark veered slightly but didn't disappear immediately. The squad broke formation, thrashing toward the surface as signal flares fired above to draw attention from nearby support boats. The noise and sudden movement confused the predator long enough for Marcus to paddle toward his teammates, who hauled him closer while maintaining defensive spacing. The instructor on the surface blew his whistle and threw flotation devices into the water as the shark circled once more, slower this time, before slipping back into the deeper blue. The ocean fell silent again, the only sound the heavy breathing of exhausted divers and the hum of approaching rescue boats. The rescue boat reached Marcus within moments, its engine cutting sharply through the waves. His teammates lifted him carefully onto the deck, water pouring off their wetsuits as medics rushed to his side. The wound on his thigh was deep and bleeding heavily, but he was conscious, his breathing fast and uneven. One medic wrapped a tourniquet above the gash while another checked for signs of shock. The others continued to scan the surrounding water, watching for the shadow that had vanished below. The ocean was calm again, but its silence carried a weight that none of them would forget. The instructor signaled for all remaining divers to return. Flares burned brightly across the sea as the support vessel circled back toward the training zone to ensure no one else was in danger. The shark did not return. By the time everyone was aboard, the tension that filled the air had turned into quiet disbelief. The team had drilled for every kind of emergency, but none of them had expected a real predator attack during routine practice. As the boat sped toward shore, Marcus drifted in and out of focus. The medic kept steady pressure on his leg, checking his pulse and reassuring him through calm gestures. When they reached the naval base, emergency crews were already waiting on the dock. He was moved quickly onto a stretcher and rushed into the infirmary for immediate treatment. Surgeons cleaned and stitched the wound, noting that the shark's teeth had cut through muscle but missed major arteries, a small stroke of luck that made survival possible. News of the incident spread quickly across the base. Fellow sailors gathered in small groups, talking quietly about what had happened. Many had seen shark fins before during open water drills, but never this close. Officials reviewed footage from safety cameras mounted on nearby boats, confirming the species. A large tiger shark, likely drawn by small schools of fish stirred up during the exercises. Environmental officers later explained that the region's warm currents often attract these predators during certain months, especially when training activity increases, resulting in increased noise and movement. Marcus spent several days in recovery, his leg wrapped in thick bandages. Doctors monitored him closely, ensuring no infection developed from the saltwater wound. Though his injury would take weeks to heal, he was expected to make a full recovery. The experience left him shaken but grateful. Many who visited him remarked on how calm he remained, even when describing the moment he saw the massive shadow rise from below. The Navy temporarily suspended training in that area, implementing new safety protocols that required the use of shark-spotting drones and protective netting before future drills. Marcus's name became part of internal safety briefings. His close call served as a real-life example of nature's unpredictability, even in highly controlled military operations. When he finally returned to the sea months later, he did so with renewed caution. The ocean, once a familiar partner in his work, now carried a quiet edge of respect and unease. The attack had been sudden, but the lesson it left behind stayed long after the wound had healed, that even the best training cannot erase the power of the wild beneath the waves. On the morning of June 14, 2021, the sky above the Gulf of Mexico glowed faintly pink as the sun broke through the haze. On the open water, a towering oil rig stood against the horizon, surrounded by calm waves that hid the deep, murky world below. Ethan Parker, a 36-year-old rig technician from Baton Rouge, started his shift before dawn. He had worked offshore for nearly a decade, known by his crew for his steady focus and easy smile. The job was demanding. Long hours, heavy machinery, and constant exposure to unpredictable sea conditions. But Ethan had learned to treat every task with patience and precision. He was a father of two and often spoke of returning home between rotations to spend time fishing with his children. The ocean, despite its danger, had always been part of his life. That morning's assignment was simple. Inspect the platform's lower supports after a recent storm had caused minor damage to one of the rig's stabilizing struts. Routine maintenance, something he had done countless times before. The sea below looked quiet, dull green with drifting bits of oil sheen reflecting light like shifting glass. By mid-morning, the wind had picked up slightly. Ethan fastened his harness, leaned carefully over the edge, and peered into the churning surface below. The water seemed calm, but it was thick with silt. He knelt to take readings, adjusting his grip as waves brushed the steel beams below. From above, nothing seemed unusual. No shadows, no movement. Yet deep in the murky gulf, a large bull shark moved steadily toward the vibrations, drawn by sound and motion from the rig's structure. Bull sharks thrive in these coastal waters, often prowling near fishing vessels, docks, and platforms, where the scent of fish, oil, and machinery mixes in the currents. Ethan shifted closer to check a corroded section of pipe. His arm extended slightly over the edge as he held a scanner against the beam. The moment lasted only seconds. A sudden burst from below sent water splashing high against the platform. A massive shape surged upward, jaws wide. The bull shark struck with explosive force, clamping onto Ethan's arm and pulling with violent strength. His body jolted forward as he lost balance, his safety line twisting around the railing. The impact ripped through his harness latch before anyone nearby could react. Crew members on the upper deck heard the crash and turned toward the noise. All they saw was water exploding upward and Ethan vanishing beneath the surface. The lifebuoy hit the sea a second too late. The water churned violently, white foam and red streaks mixing in the waves as the predator dragged its prey beneath the rig's steel frame. Then, silence. Only drifting tools and shattered gear remained on the surface. The Gulf, once calm and familiar, had turned into a sudden hunting ground. The surface of the water settled slowly, leaving ripples that spread across the rig's base. For several seconds, no one moved. The crew stood frozen, eyes locked on the spot where Ethan had disappeared. Then a shout broke the silence, and men rushed to the edge, throwing ropes, rings, and lines into the water. The lifeboat team scrambled into position, lowering a rescue raft as alarms echoed through the steel corridors. The sea below, however, remained strangely calm, except for a faint swirl of red drifting outward with the current. A search began instantly. Spotlights turned toward the surface, scanning the shadowed water under the platform. The bull shark had vanished, leaving no movement, no shadow. Divers prepared gear, but the risk was enormous. The crew could not see more than a few feet below the surface, due to the dense, cloudy water stirred by the predator's attack. Oil residue shimmered across the top, mixing with traces of blood and broken debris from the railing. Within minutes, boats circled the rig, their engines rumbling low as workers peered anxiously into the sea. A few minutes later, a hard hat floated to the surface, its strap torn and stained. Then a piece of safety webbing drifted up, frayed at the ends. The waves slapped softly against the metal pillars as the realization began to sink in. Ethan was gone. The accident had happened too quickly for any rescue to take effect. The predator had struck, completed its assault, and disappeared into the murk below without a sound. Supervisors ordered a temporary shutdown of all lower-deck activity while the Coast Guard was contacted. A helicopter arrived soon after, circling overhead as rescue divers cautiously entered the water. The operation stretched for hours, but there was little to recover. Only scattered equipment and Ethan's torn harness were found entangled near one of the lower supports. The current had likely carried the rest away into open water. The rig fell quiet that evening. Work stopped completely as shock spread among the team. The ocean that had supported their work and provided for their families had revealed its brutal side in an instant. Many of the men sat together on the platform, staring into the horizon, each lost in thought. Safety drills and procedures repeated daily had done nothing to prepare them for what they had seen. The loss of a co-worker in such a violent way left an emptiness that words could not fill. In the days that followed, investigators arrived to inspect the site, interviewing workers and reviewing camera feeds from the maintenance deck. Experts explained that bull sharks were known to patrol offshore structures, often mistaking human movement for prey. The shallow, oil-warmed waters near the Gulf's industrial zones attracted them regularly. For the men who had witnessed it, no explanation could erase the images from their minds. The sound of the splash, the burst of white foam, and the spreading red stain would remain forever. A memorial was later placed on the main deck in Ethan's honor, a small plaque fixed beside the rail where he had worked his final shift. Flowers were sent from his family, and the company established new safety measures to restrict all inspection work above open water. But among those who stayed on the rig, silence lingered every time they passed that section. The Gulf stretched endlessly around them, calm yet unpredictable, holding both livelihood and loss within its depths. The ocean, vast and indifferent, kept its secret as the platform lights flickered against the night sky. August 14, 2022, the bright Caribbean sun shimmered over a quiet lagoon off the coast of Belize. The air was warm and still, the sea flat like glass. Lucas Moreno, a 27-year-old diving instructor from Costa Rica, had come to Belize for a short break after a long season of guiding tours. He was calm, cheerful, and always drawn to peaceful water away from crowds. Joining him that morning was his close friend, Tara Lynn, a marine biology student studying nearby reef ecosystems. Both shared a love for exploring shallow reefs where colorful corals and small fish danced under sunlight like moving jewels. The lagoon was a perfect picture of calm. It stretched lazily between a ring of mangroves, its clear water tinted turquoise by the sand below. Lucas and Tara anchored their small rented boat near a patch of coral heads and slipped quietly into the warm shallows with their masks and fins. Schools of snapper flickered beneath them, silver bodies flashing in the light. The water was calm enough to hear their own slow breaths echoing through their snorkels. Everything around them felt safe, open, and quiet. Lucas swam farther toward a deeper channel, pointing at coral fans swaying in the light current. The beauty of the reef had a soothing rhythm, but hidden just beyond the coral edge, a sleek black-tipped shark moved silently through the shadows. Drawn by the rippling sounds of fins and the quick scatter of frightened fish, it turned toward the movement. Blacktips were known for their bursts of speed and curiosity, and this one began circling closer, using the patchy sunlight to mask its approach. Lucas floated unaware for several moments before a sudden flicker of movement below caught his eye. A dark shape streaked upward from beneath the coral. The shark struck fast, brushing past his leg and slicing deep with one sharp motion. The sudden jolt of pain shocked him. Blood drifted into the water in a thin cloud, swirling quickly with the sand his fins had kicked up. He thrashed in panic, trying to push backward as the shark turned again, circling closer through the haze. Tara noticed the flash of the fin and the commotion. She kicked hard toward him, splashing in every direction to draw the predator's attention away. The water became a blur of sand, bubbles, and shifting color. The black tip darted in and out of view, each pass closer than the last, its sleek body weaving between coral spires like a shadow. Every turn felt like the beginning of another strike. Lucas's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he tried to stay upright. His legs stung with a steady pulse of pain, and the water around him grew cloudy from stirred debris. The shark circled again, its movements sharp and deliberate. Tara splashed harder, desperate to keep it distracted. For endless seconds, it hovered just beyond reach, testing them. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it veered toward deeper water and disappeared into the blue. Lucas floated motionless for a few seconds after the black tip vanished, his breath ragged as bubbles rose in uneven bursts. The water, once clear and bright, now shimmered with drifting sand and faint traces of blood. His leg burned where the shark's teeth had grazed, leaving a long, jagged wound across his calf. Tara swam quickly to his side, holding him steady as he struggled to stay calm. Together, they moved slowly toward the shallow edge of the lagoon, their fins stirring clouds of white sand behind them. Each kick felt heavy. The water seemed thicker, the journey longer. Lucas fought to stay conscious, his pulse racing and his body trembling from the shock. The lagoon, which had looked peaceful minutes ago, now felt endless and unpredictable. Every shadow below made his heart leap, fearing the predator's return. But the water stayed still, as if the sea itself had exhaled after a sudden storm. The black tip had disappeared into deeper channels, leaving only silence and the faint ripples of their movements. When they finally reached the sandbar, Tara pulled him onto the shallow shelf. He collapsed on his back, gasping under the bright Caribbean sun. The cut across his leg was deep but clean. Blood streamed into the shallow water, staining the tide around his foot a pale red. She tore a strip from her snorkeling vest to tie around the wound, pressing tightly to slow the bleeding. The air was still, and the only sound was the faint lapping of waves against the sand. Their boat floated a short distance away, swaying gently in the current. With effort, Lucas stood with Tara's help and hobbled toward it. Every step sent pain through his leg, but determination kept him moving. They climbed aboard, water dripping from their gear, hearts still pounding. Tara steered the small vessel toward shore, keeping an eye on the surface in case the shark reappeared. Behind them, the lagoon shimmered as if nothing had happened, hiding all signs of the chaos that had just unfolded. By the time they reached the dock, locals had gathered to help. Fishermen rushed with towels and first aid kits, bandaging Lucas's wound before escorting him to a nearby clinic. The doctor cleaned the injury carefully and stitched it closed, noting that the bite had narrowly missed muscle and major arteries. Lucas sat quietly, pale and drained, as the adrenaline faded and the pain deepened. He knew how lucky he was. A few inches deeper and the result might have been very different. Later that evening, the story spread through the small coastal town. People whispered about the incident with awe and disbelief. Sharks were common near the reefs, but attacks in such shallow lagoons were rare. Experts explained that black tips often followed fish schools into shallows and reacted out of confusion rather than aggression. Lucas's wound, though painful, was considered an exploratory bite, a test from a curious predator, not a deliberate hunt. Over the next few days, he stayed indoors, leg bandaged and elevated. Tara visited often, bringing food and quiet company. The event left a lasting mark, not just on his skin, but in his mind as well. The lagoon that once felt like a playground now seemed alive with hidden energy, unpredictable and raw. Weeks later, Lucas returned to the same beach. He stood at the edge of the water, the tide brushing against his feet. He did not enter, but he watched the sunlight flicker across the surface, remembering the moment when calm beauty turned into chaos. The scar on his leg would always remind him that even in shallow, clear waters, the ocean holds power beyond understanding. June 14, 2016. The Atlantic stretched endlessly in every direction, the surface restless under gray clouds. 34-year-old Nathaniel Reed stood on the deck of a small white yacht, enjoying what had begun as a weekend sailing trip with 3 close friends. He was an experienced sailor who had spent most of his free time on the water, often describing the ocean as his place of peace. A mechanical engineer from Boston, Nathaniel had saved for years to buy his share in the boat. He was careful, steady, and calm, even during storms, and was known for keeping his composure when others panicked. The group had left Bermuda 2 days earlier, expecting mild weather and smooth travel toward the Caribbean. But by the second evening, the sea changed without warning. Winds rose sharply, waves grew steeper, and the air filled with sheets of salt spray. They lowered the sails and secured their supplies, but the storm built quickly. Hours later, a wall of water struck the side of the yacht, flipping it violently. The sound of cracking wood and rushing foam filled the air as the vessel rolled, then capsized completely. Nathaniel and his friends were thrown into the churning waves, clinging to whatever floated nearby. Through the chaos, one of them managed to release an emergency life raft, a small orange inflatable designed for temporary survival. The men scrambled onto it, coughing, soaked and shaking as the wind howled above them. The yacht disappeared beneath the surface soon after, leaving them stranded. By morning, the sea had calmed, but the sun was relentless. Their food and water were limited, and each hour dragged heavier than the last. Their skin blistered under the heat, and salt water rubbed raw against their arms. The second night brought exhaustion, hunger, and silence. Nathaniel tried to stay alert, drifting near the raft to keep it balanced, though his limbs ached and his lips cracked from thirst. By the third day, the ocean had grown eerily still. Beneath the quiet surface, a large shadow began to glide closer, smooth, slow, deliberate. It was an oceanic white-tip shark, drawn by the faint metallic scent of blood and the random kicks of weak legs. The predator circled with the patience of deep-sea hunters, its fins cutting shallow ripples through the still water. Nathaniel shifted slightly to adjust his hold on the raft, unaware of what moved below. A second later, the surface exploded. The shark surged upward with terrifying speed, its jaws clamping around his leg and pulling him down with violent force. The raft rocked wildly as his friends shouted and struck the water with paddles, desperate to scare the predator away. But the sea swallowed him instantly. The water turned red, swirling and spreading across the waves. And just like that, Nathaniel was gone. The ocean grew silent after the attack, except for the faint sound of waves slapping against the small life raft. The men clung to its edges, their faces pale, their bodies shaking. The bright orange raft rocked gently on the endless blue, surrounded by a spreading red stain that slowly faded into the water. Nathaniel's friends called out for him again and again, but there was no answer, only the low roll of distant swells. The sea had taken him quickly and without mercy. Minutes felt like hours as the remaining survivors huddled together, too stunned to speak. The shock left them motionless, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. They had seen the flash of the shark's body, the speed, the power, the way the water boiled with motion. It was over before they could react. None of them could tell exactly where it had gone. Beneath them, the deep ocean looked endless, calm again, as though nothing had happened. The sun climbed higher, beating down on their burned shoulders. Salt water dried on their lips and stung their skin. They tried to stay as still as possible, fearful of drawing attention from whatever still swam below. Every ripple made them flinch. Every passing shadow brought their hearts to a stop. Hours later, they began to drift aimlessly, carried by the wind and weak currents. Their bodies trembled from exhaustion and grief. By late afternoon, one of them spotted a distant shimmer, metal glinting under sunlight. It was a cargo ship, faint and far away. They waved frantically, but their voices were too weak, their limbs too heavy. The raft continued to drift as the sun dropped toward the horizon. Eventually, night fell, and the world around them disappeared into darkness. Stars filled the sky, but they offered no comfort, only a reminder of how small they were against the vast sea. At dawn, their rescue came unexpectedly. A search plane flying a wide pattern spotted the orange raft near scattered debris from the capsized yacht. A rescue team arrived hours later, pulling the surviving men aboard. They were silent, too weak to stand, their eyes hollow from fatigue and loss. When asked what had happened, none could describe it clearly. The images were too fast, too brutal to form into words. Nathaniel's body was never recovered. The sea kept him as it often does. His family held a small memorial weeks later on the Massachusetts coast, where he had first learned to sail. Friends gathered, leaving flowers and small paper boats that floated out toward the horizon. His story was later studied by marine experts who pointed out the nature of oceanic whitetips. Curious, patient, and opportunistic, these sharks often approach survivors of shipwrecks or crashes, drawn by faint movements and the scent of injury. The event served as a grim reminder to sailors and adventurers that survival in open water depends on more than courage or skill. Sometimes even experience cannot protect against the hidden dangers that wait beneath calm waves. For Nathaniel, the ocean he loved became his final horizon, a place of beauty and peril bound together in one endless stretch of blue. March 8, 2025. Dawn broke clear and still over Gansby, South Africa, a place known worldwide for its shark cage diving adventures. Among the group of tourists aboard a white charter vessel were Alex Carter, a 29-year-old wildlife photographer from Sydney, and Mia Reynolds, a documentary filmmaker who had joined him for a marine project. Alex had spent years capturing dangerous creatures in their natural environments, from crocodiles in northern Australia to lions on the plains of Kenya. Yet despite all his experience, he had never come face to face with a great white shark. The trip was meant to be thrilling, safe, and unforgettable. Mia and Alex had arrived the evening before, excited but cautious. Both had researched the diving operators and safety equipment. The cages were made from heavy steel, designed to withstand the power of one of nature's strongest predators. The ocean, calm that morning, shimmered under the bright sun. The crew mixed a blend of fish oil and bait to lure sharks closer for observation. The group of divers took turns entering the submerged cages, where visibility stretched for meters in every direction. When it was Alex's turn, he lowered himself into the cool blue water, gripping the cage bars tightly. Mia remained above the surface, her underwater camera rolling through a clear viewing port. Around them, shadows began to form below. Faint outlines became defined as enormous sharks circled, their movements slow and deliberate. The sight was mesmerizing, the silent glide of creatures larger than their cages, powerful yet graceful. For several minutes, the experience went as expected. The sharks passed close but did not strike. The water was calm, almost peaceful. Then, without warning, one massive shape emerged from the deep shadow beneath them, faster, closer, and far more aggressive than the rest. A colossal great white surged upward with stunning speed, its open jaws revealing rows of serrated teeth. The creature slammed directly into Alex's cage, the impact reverberating through the steel bars. The sound of twisting metal echoed through the water. The shark bit again, its head shaking violently from side to side, tearing and testing the cage like prey. Alex held on tightly, bubbles rushing from his regulator as the structure rocked. The force drove the cage downward, scraping against the boat's chain line. Bubbles and sand swirled into chaos as the predator's jaws clamped again, this time locking around one of the horizontal bars. The steel shrieked under pressure, then snapped. The cage jolted apart, sending Alex spinning backward into the open water. His camera gear floated free as he kicked wildly, trying to regain control. The shark turned sharply, circling him in bursts of speed. The calm, beautiful sea of minutes earlier had transformed into a violent arena. Alex's body spun through the swirling water as the heavy cage broke apart beside him. The massive shark turned sharply, its tail sweeping a burst of bubbles and debris into the current. The sound of the boat's propellers thudded faintly above, but down below, everything moved in a blur of motion and color. The great white's huge body curved around him, eyes black and unblinking, each slow pass tightening the circle. Alex kicked hard toward the surface, feeling a flash of pain tear through his leg as the shark brushed past, teeth grazing skin and tearing through his diving suit. Blood drifted upward in thin red ribbons, spreading quickly in the clear water. The predator returned in seconds, drawn by the scent. It lunged again, biting through one of the broken cage bars that trailed near Alex like twisted wreckage. The steel bent as if made of paper, shaking him violently as the shark pulled at the debris. Alex tried to push away, his body spinning backward as bubbles filled his mask. Panic surged through every nerve, but instinct kept him moving. His training and years of diving experience told him not to freeze. He kicked, rolled, and thrust upward, desperate for light. Above him, Mia saw the chaos unfold through the camera's lens. The surface boiled with motion as she signaled frantically to the crew. They dropped ropes and flotation devices, shouting orders as one of them threw bait away from the cage to distract the shark. The great white shifted course briefly, snapping toward the movement, its tail striking the water so hard that foam sprayed into the air. Alex used that moment to rise, breaking through the surface in a violent splash. His shoulder burned, his leg was bleeding heavily, and his vision blurred from exhaustion. The crew pulled him toward the boat, hands grabbing his arms and vest as another wave struck the hull. The shark lunged once more, bumping the underside of the cage wreckage, but did not break the surface. With all their strength, they hauled Alex aboard. He collapsed on the deck, gasping and trembling, blood dripping across the white floor. The ocean behind them churned, and then fell still. The predator vanished into the deep, leaving only the wrecked cage twisting beneath the surface like a broken trap. Mia ripped off her diving mask and knelt beside him, pressing towels and bandages to his wounds as the boat sped toward shore. Every jolt of the waves sent a fresh sting through his torn leg and shoulder, but his pulse stayed strong. The captain radioed the nearest harbor for emergency support. Within minutes, they reached the docks, where paramedics rushed to lift him onto a stretcher. At the hospital, doctors worked to clean and stitch the deep gashes. Alex drifted in and out of awareness, his body trembling from blood loss and shock. When he finally stabilized, he learned that no bones were broken and no arteries severed. A miracle considering the force of the attack. In the days that followed, the story spread quickly through local and international news. Images of the destroyed cage and damaged equipment were shown as warnings about the unpredictable nature of wild encounters. Shark experts later explained that great whites sometimes mistake reflections or movement for prey, especially when bait is nearby. Weeks later, Alex returned to the shore, his arm still bandaged but his spirit unbroken. He stood quietly at the dock where the boat had once left and watched the calm sea stretch endlessly before him. The fear had passed, but respect remained. The encounter had changed him, leaving scars not only on his body but deep within his memory. What was once fascination had become understanding, a reminder that even the clearest water hides unimaginable power beneath its surface.